So it's been a while since I worked on my DIY shed since my priorities this year changed slightly, but I managed to find some time to begin working on the next part of the project, and that part being the gutters. If you weren't aware, gutters are really critical, and I did start to notice where not having gutters on my shed would soon lead to some foundation issues or soil erosion. So before the problem got worse, I went ahead and picked up a few components from my big box store. Now, initially, I wasn't going to record my journey of putting up the gutters or the other parts of the shed build, but I remembered a few of you all mentioned you've learned a lot from my journey, the do's and don'ts, and if I can help just one other person out there, in my opinion, it's worth doing. But because I had that initial thought in mind of not putting the video out there, I didn't bother putting too much thought into finding creative angles to shoot the video, but hopefully those who are interested can still take something away from the video, or maybe it'll provide some insight to those who are just curious about the gutter install process. Also, speaking about the install process, I should point out that seamless gutters is the way to go. However, initially I was under the impression that it may cost me a bit more than I was wanting to spend to have someone come out and extrude a seamless gutter for my shed's roof. But I did go extra heavy on applying sealant where my gutter seams met to try to avoid any leaking issues in the future. But I just wanted to throw that info out there in case anyone with experience was just wondering. What I also learned was that it was best to try to prep the gutter as much as possible on the ground versus being on a ladder and having to slide hanger brackets in place, install end caps, or position your downspout hole. So similar to the seams, I went extra heavy when applying sealant around the end caps. Since there were a few scratches on the gutter that I believe were made during the transportation process, I went ahead and applied some touch-up spray paint. When it came to installing the gutter, I used a secondary ladder to help hold the gutter in place while I focused on aligning the higher side of the gutter on the pre-marked lines I had already marked on the shed ahead of time. Now, this part probably took me about 40 minutes to an hour to complete since it was my first time doing this, and as I was screwing in my gutter hangers, I wanted to make sure the gutter maintained a slight downward angle so the water would drain properly. I also wanted to make sure I installed the gutter underneath my roof's drip edge as much as I could to help reduce the chance of water flowing behind the gutter. Any areas where I couldn't get the gutter to slide under the drip edge, I just added some gutter sealant to the top edge of the gutter to seal any gaps. Once the gutter was installed, I could finally focus on installing the downspout. Now, when I started to install the downspout clips, I started to overthink about how water may somehow penetrate through the exterior hole I had to create to hold the bracket and over time rot out the wood behind the siding. So as a cheap solution, I decided to add some leftover flash tape behind the clip to prevent or slow down any water related issues. Again, I think this is probably overkill, but I figure why not if it only takes a few seconds to do. To finish off the downspout, I installed a flexible downspout extension for a few reasons. One, it was easier to do so considering the downspout's location, but I can also easily remove it later and change things up if I decide to. I also considered adding or relocating my current rain barrels so they are staged behind the shed and refilled by the shed's roof in the future. So that's the third reason I went with this temporary / permanent solution. After everything was installed and in place, I figured this would be a good time to test out the system before I move on to the final step. Since the water appeared to be draining correctly, it was time to shift my focus to installing gutter guards, since I have several trees around the shed that would eventually toss their leaves on my shed's roof and clog up the gutter. And one thing I don't want to do is have to climb back up here in the future and have to manually clean out the gutters every single year. Thankfully, I had already researched some of the top gutter guards on the market for installing on my home, so I already had a general idea of what type to buy for this project that seemed to do well overall. Now, I'm not sponsored by the company that makes these gutter guards, but in case someone is wondering what I used, I'll leave a link in the description, since I know it was a pain for me when I was first looking into some of the best and affordable options, considering how saturated the gutter guard market is. Once everything was installed, I tested the water flow again to verify if the gutter guards would be an issue. Now, of course, I received heavier rainfall than I'm able to simulate with my garden hose, but so far it seems to be working correctly. Anyway, if you made it this far, thanks for staying, and hopefully you learned something or maybe found it interesting. For those new to this DIY shed series, you can find a link below that will contain the entire shed build process. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos, and hit that like button to encourage YouTube to share this video with others. Anyway, until next time, thanks for watching.